You can earn six figures and still be bad with money. Some of the worst financial patterns I see don't come from people who don't make enough. They come from people who make plenty and still feel like something's off. If your income keeps climbing but your stress about money never actually goes down, this video is for you. I'm walking through 5 specific signs that you might be bad with money even if your paycheck looks great on paper, and exactly what to do about each one. Some of these might feel a little uncomfortable if they hit close to home. That's fine. Recognizing the pattern is step 1. Let's get into it. Before we start, I want to be clear about something. A good salary and good money management are two completely separate skills. One is about how much comes in. The other is about what you do with it once it's there. You can be excellent at your job, genuinely talented, genuinely valuable, and still be financially behind, because nobody ever actually taught you that second skill. That's not a character flaw. It's a gap. And gaps can be closed. Here's what we're covering. Not knowing your real numbers, having a savings rate that doesn't match your income, treating debt like a normal permanent fixture instead of a problem to solve, drifting with no specific financial goals, and measuring your progress against the wrong yardstick, other people, instead of your own plan. If even one of these sounds like you, stick around, because by the end you'll have a specific fix for each one. And if all 5 sound like you, don't panic. That just means you have 5 clear places to start, which is more useful than a vague feeling that something's wrong. Let's go through them one at a time. Sign 1. You don't actually know your numbers. Here's a simple test. Right now, without opening a single app, could you say, within a few $100s, what your total monthly spending actually is? Not your income. Not what you think you spend. Your actual number, every category included, from rent to subscriptions to the coffee you grabbed on the way to work 3 times this week. If you can't answer that within a reasonably close range, this is sign number 1, and it's the most common one I see, even among people earning genuinely comfortable salaries. Why this happens? It's not laziness. It's usually the opposite. People with good incomes tend to build a kind of financial autopilot. The bills get paid. The account never goes negative. Nothing catches fire. So there's never a forcing moment that makes you actually look closely. Contrast that with someone living closer to the edge of their income, who's forced to track every dollar out of necessity, because one miscalculation means a bounced payment or a missed bill. A comfortable income removes that forcing function, which sounds like a good thing, and in some ways it is, but it also means the habit of actually knowing your numbers never gets built in the first place. You end up financially fluent in your paycheck and financially illiterate in your own spending. What this looks like in practice. Picture someone with a genuinely solid income. They never worry about covering rent. They eat out several times a week without checking prices first. They've got a handful of subscriptions signed up for over the years that haven't been reviewed since. None of this looks alarming day to day. It's just comfortable, normal living. But if you actually add up the full picture, subscriptions, dining out, the small impulse purchases, the "I'll treat myself" moments, the real total is often meaningfully higher than what that person would guess if you asked them to estimate it on the spot. Not because they're reckless. Because nobody ever forced them to look, so they never did. It's not just spending, it's net worth too. Monthly spending is only half of knowing your numbers. The other half is your net worth. Everything you own, minus everything you owe, added up into one honest figure. This one gets avoided even more often than spending, because it feels bigger and more permanent, like a verdict rather than a snapshot. Here's why avoiding it is a mistake. Net worth is the only number that actually tells you whether you're moving forward or standing still, regardless of how much you earn or spend in any given month. You can have a great income and a great-looking lifestyle and still have a net worth that hasn't moved in years, because everything earned is also being spent, leaving nothing behind to actually accumulate. Without checking, that pattern can continue indefinitely without ever showing up as an obvious red flag in day-to-day life. Calculating it isn't complicated, even though it feels intimidating the first time. Add up your bank balances, retirement accounts, and anything else of real value you own. Subtract everything you owe, credit cards, loans, anything else. What's left is your net worth. It can be a small number. It can even be negative, especially early in adulthood or after a major expense. That's not the point. The point is having the number at all, so that next quarter, next year, you have something real to compare it against instead of just a feeling. Why a good salary doesn't fix this. This is really the core issue behind this entire video, so it's worth saying plainly here first. Income and awareness are not the same thing. A higher salary just means you can absorb not knowing your numbers for longer before it becomes a visible problem. It's a longer runway before a crash, not the absence of one. Some of the most financially fragile people aren't low earners. They're high earners who've simply never had a reason to look closely, until something forces the issue. A job loss, a market downturn, an unexpected expense that reveals just how little cushion actually exists relative to how much they assumed was there. The reframe. Knowing your numbers isn't about restriction. It's not the same thing as budgeting in the cutting things out sense. It's just visibility, treating your money the same way you'd treat any other important part of your life you actually pay attention to. You wouldn't drive a car for years without ever checking the fuel gauge just because it's never run out yet. The fix. 2 numbers, tracked on a repeating schedule. First, your last 30 days of spending, pulled directly from your bank and card statements, not estimated from memory. Most banking apps will categorize this automatically if you look. Don't judge it yet, just look at it, and compare it to your take-home income. That gap is the entire story of your financial life in a single comparison. Second, your net worth, calculated once and then revisited every quarter, not obsessively tracked day to day. Once someone starts checking both of these consistently, the typical shift isn't that they discover they've been reckless, it's that they finally have a baseline. And a baseline is what turns, "I should probably save more," into an actual, measurable target. Sign 2. Your savings rate doesn't match your income. Here's a question worth sitting with. As your income has gone up over the years, has your savings rate, the percentage of your income you actually keep, gone up with it? For a lot of people earning good money, the honest answer is no. The dollar amount saved might have technically increased, but the percentage has stayed flat, or even shrunk. Why this happens? This is one of the most well-documented patterns in personal finance, and it happens for an understandable reason. Spending naturally expands to match whatever's available, unless something actively interrupts it. Every raise, every bonus, every new tier of income opens up a slightly nicer version of normal. A slightly nicer apartment. A slightly nicer car. More takeout, better vacations. None of these individual upgrades feel excessive in the moment. Each one feels earned, and in a sense, it is. But collectively, they absorb the exact amount of extra income that could have gone toward actually building wealth, leaving the savings rate exactly where it started. What this looks like in practice. Picture someone early in their career, saving a modest but real percentage of a modest income, not because they're especially disciplined, but because there simply isn't much room for their spending to expand. Over the years, their income roughly doubles. If their savings rate had stayed the same, their actual dollar savings would have doubled too. But somewhere along the way, spending crept up in step with income. Nicer housing, more frequent travel, better everyday conveniences. And by the time their income has doubled, their savings rate has actually dropped, even though the dollar figure looks superficially larger than it used to. On paper, it looks like progress. In percentage terms, it's actually a step backward. Why the dollar amount is the wrong measure? This is the specific trap worth naming. Looking at the raw number saved and feeling good about it, without checking it against income. Saving a meaningfully larger amount than you used to feels like clear progress, and emotionally, it can be satisfying. But the number that actually determines your long-term financial trajectory isn't the dollar amount, it's the percentage. Someone earning a modest income who consistently saves a healthy percentage of it will often out-accumulate someone earning far more who saves a much smaller share, simply because percentage compounds against a growing base over time, and habits set early tend to persist. Why a good salary doesn't fix this? If anything, a good salary makes this trap easier to fall into, not harder. Low percentage saving is much less visible day to day when the raw dollar numbers involved are large. Someone saving 5% of a very high income might still be putting away a dollar figure that sounds impressive out loud, which makes it easy to feel financially responsible without ever checking whether that 5% is actually doing the long-term job a much higher percentage would do. The salary provides cover. It doesn't provide the outcome. The reframe. Every raise or bonus is a decision point, whether or not it feels like one. The default, if you do nothing deliberate, is that the extra income quietly gets absorbed into slightly upgraded spending. That's not a failure of willpower, it's just what happens by default, because nothing is actively directing that extra money elsewhere. The fix isn't refusing every lifestyle improvement forever. It's making sure the upgrade is a conscious choice about a portion of the raise, not the automatic destination for all of it. The fix. Calculate your actual current savings rate, total saved and invested, divided by total take-home income, as an honest percentage, not a dollar figure. Then set a rule for future income increases. A fixed portion of every raise or bonus, ideally at least half, moves directly into savings or investments before it ever touches your regular spending account. This can be automated through a direct transfer or a change in retirement contribution percentage, so it happens without requiring ongoing willpower. You still get to enjoy part of every raise. You just stop letting all of it quietly disappear into a slightly nicer version of the same spending pattern. Sign 3. You treat debt as a normal, permanent fixture. Here's the pattern to check for. Do you carry a revolving balance on a credit card, month after month, even though your income is genuinely high enough that you could pay it off if you prioritized it? If so, this is sign number 3, and it's one of the more expensive ones on this list, precisely because it hides so well behind a comfortable income. Why this happens? Debt becomes normalized in a very specific way once it's been around long enough. It stops feeling like a problem to solve and starts feeling like a fixed cost, similar to rent or a phone bill. The mental category shifts from, "This is a debt I'm actively working to eliminate," to, "This is just a line item I pay every month." Once that mental shift happens, the balance can sit there indefinitely, quietly accumulating interest, without ever triggering the sense of urgency it would trigger if it were newly acquired. What this looks like in practice. Picture someone with a comfortable income who's carried a moderate credit card balance for years. They always make at least the minimum payment, sometimes more. Nothing about their financial life looks alarming. No missed payments, no collection calls, nothing dramatic. But that balance has quietly been accruing interest the entire time, meaning a real and ongoing portion of their income is going toward interest charges on money they already spent, rather than toward anything building their future. Because their income comfortably covers the minimum payment and then some, there's never a forcing moment that makes eliminating the balance feel urgent. It just persists, sometimes for years, sometimes even growing during periods of higher spending. The real cost of just the minimum. It's worth being specific about why this matters so much. Credit card interest rates are typically high relative to almost any other form of borrowing, which means a balance that isn't actively being paid down is often working against your finances more aggressively than most other financial decisions you'll make. Every dollar sitting in revolving debt while you comfortably afford to eliminate it is a dollar that's effectively earning interest for someone else, funded directly by your paycheck, indefinitely, for as long as the balance exists. Why a good salary doesn't fix this? A higher income doesn't eliminate a revolving balance, it just makes the minimum payment easier to absorb without noticing the cost. That's precisely what allows the balance to become permanent instead of temporary. If your income were lower, the pressure of a growing balance would likely force a reckoning sooner. A comfortable income removes that pressure, which paradoxically makes it easier for expensive debt to sit around for years doing quiet damage in the background. The reframe. The specific mental shift that matters here is treating any interest-bearing debt you can actually afford to eliminate as a temporary, urgent project rather than a permanent fixture of your monthly budget. That doesn't mean panic or shame about how the balance got there in the first place. Plenty of reasonable circumstances lead to carrying debt at some point. It means actively deciding that normal isn't the same as permanent, and treating payoff as a real, time-bound goal instead of something that happens passively whenever there's leftover money. The fix. Take the specific balance and interest rate and calculate what a realistic, accelerated payoff timeline actually looks like. Most banking apps or a basic online calculator can do this in under a minute. Then treat that payoff amount, for a defined period, the way you'd treat a bill that has to be paid, not something optional that happens if there's anything left over at the end of the month. If you're carrying multiple balances, consider prioritizing by interest rate, tackling the highest rate balance first while maintaining minimums on the rest. Once it's paid off, redirect that same monthly amount straight into savings. You've already proven you can live without it, so there's no adjustment period required. If you've caught yourself nodding at any of these so far, hit subscribe. We're covering the last two signs right now, and they might be the ones that hit closest to home. Sign 4. You have no specific financial goals. Here's a subtle one. Do you have money saved with no specific purpose attached to it? Just a general sense that saving is good, without a defined target, dollar amount, or timeline behind it. If your saving happens in the vague direction of, just in case, rather than toward anything specific, this is sign number 4. Why this happens? Saving without a goal isn't laziness, it's actually a very common default, because save more is the advice everyone hears, while save for exactly what, by exactly when, requires a level of specificity most personal finance content skips right past. It's genuinely easier to open a savings account and put money into it than it is to sit down and define precisely what that money is for and when you'll need it. So a lot of people end up with savings that exists, technically, but doesn't have a job to do. What this looks like in practice. Picture someone with a decent-sized savings balance that's grown slowly over a few years, without a specific plan behind it. Because there's no defined target, that money is vulnerable in a very specific way. When a big expense comes up, a vacation, a large purchase, an upgrade to something, that undesignated savings becomes the easiest, least resistant source to pull from, since it isn't earmarked for anything in particular. Over time, the balance can end up oscillating up and down for years without ever meaningfully growing, not because the person isn't capable of saving, but because nothing was ever protecting that money from being reabsorbed into spending. Why goalless money gets spent? This is worth understanding clearly, because it explains why this pattern is so persistent. Money without a specific job is, psychologically, much easier to justify spending than money that's explicitly earmarked. A savings account simply labeled savings doesn't put up much resistance when an appealing expense shows up. A savings account labeled house down payment, $18,000 by 2027, creates a much stronger mental barrier, because spending from it means consciously working against a goal you've already committed to, not just dipping into an anonymous pool of money. Why a good salary doesn't fix this? A higher income means goalless savings can still grow to a fairly large number over time, purely through the sheer volume of money moving through your accounts, which creates a false sense of progress. A large but undirected balance feels like financial success. But without a specific purpose, that balance remains just as vulnerable to being slowly drained by whatever appealing expense comes along next, regardless of how large it's grown to be. The reframe. The goal isn't to save more in the abstract. It's to give every dollar you're setting aside an actual job. A name, a target amount, and a timeline. Vague savings goals produce vague results. Specific savings goals, with a defined number and date attached, create the kind of psychological ownership that actually protects the money from being casually reabsorbed into everyday spending. The fix. Take whatever you're currently saving and assign it a specific name, target dollar amount, and target date, even if the goal is modest to start. Emergency fund. $6,000 by next December, functions completely differently, psychologically, than an unlabeled savings balance sitting in the same account. If you're saving toward more than one thing, consider separate accounts or clearly labeled sub-accounts for each goal, so the money can't blur together into one anonymous pool. Revisit the goals every few months, adjust amounts and timelines as your situation changes, but always keep every dollar you're setting aside assigned to something specific. Sign 5. You measure yourself against peers, not your own plan. Here's the last one, and it might be the hardest to notice from the inside. Do you gauge how you're doing financially by comparing your spending, your car, your vacations, or your lifestyle to the people around you, rather than against your own specific plan or numbers? If your sense of doing fine comes primarily from social comparison rather than your own net worth or savings rate, this is sign number 5 why this happens. Humans are wired to use social comparison as a shortcut for figuring out how they're doing. It's a deeply ingrained instinct, not a character flaw, and it shows up in almost every area of life, not just money. The problem is that this shortcut breaks down badly when it comes to personal finance, because you almost never actually see the full financial picture of the people you're comparing yourself to. You see the car, the vacation, the dinner out. You don't see their debt, their savings rate, their family financial support, or their actual net worth. Comparing your full picture to someone else's highlight reel is a fundamentally rigged comparison, even though it doesn't feel rigged in the moment. What this looks like in practice. Picture someone whose income has grown substantially over the years, largely by earning at a similar level to their friends and colleagues. Because everyone around them is spending at a similar, elevated level, their own elevated spending feels completely normal, even responsible, by comparison. Nobody in their social circle is visibly struggling, so there's no obvious warning sign prompting reflection. But because everyone in that peer group has also had their spending rise in step with their income, the entire comparison group has quietly lost any real benchmark for what fine actually means. Everyone is reassuring everyone else by comparison, while collectively nobody is checking the only numbers that actually matter. Why this trap gets worse, not better, at higher incomes. This is a specific and important nuance. Social comparison as a financial gauge tends to get more distorted, not less, as income rises. At a modest income, peer spending is naturally capped by peer income, which puts a rough ceiling on how far the comparison trap can pull you. At a higher income, your peer group is also earning well, which means the visible spending bar rises right along with you. Nicer cars, more frequent travel, more expensive routine choices, keeping the comparison goalposts perpetually just out of reach, no matter how much your own income grows. Why a good salary doesn't fix this. A good salary actually supplies the exact fuel this trap needs. Enough spare income to keep pace with rising peer spending, without immediate financial pain. That relative comfort is precisely what allows the comparison trap to run for years without ever triggering an obvious problem, until, eventually, someone finally checks their actual net worth or savings rate against their income and goals, and finds a gap that peer comparison had been quietly hiding the entire time. The reframe. The only financial benchmark that actually matters is the comparison between where you are and where your own specific goals say you should be. not where anyone else around you happens to be. Two people with identical incomes can have completely different appropriate savings rates, spending patterns, and priorities, depending on their own debt, goals, family circumstances, and timeline. Someone else's spending was never actually a valid benchmark for your plan in the first place, even though it's the comparison that comes most naturally. The fix. When you notice yourself making a financial decision, upgrading something, taking on a new expense, specifically because everyone else is doing it, pause and ask a different question instead. Does this fit my own plan, my own numbers, my own goals? Not whether it fits in with what people around you are doing. Revisit your own savings rate and progress toward your specific goals as your primary scoreboard, checked on a regular schedule, and treat peer comparison as background noise rather than a meaningful signal about how you're actually doing. So to recap, not knowing your real numbers, a savings rate that hasn't kept pace with your income, treating debt as permanent instead of temporary, saving with no specific goal attached, and measuring yourself against peers instead of your own plan. None of these are about how much you earn. All 5 are entirely about what happens after the money arrives, which is genuinely good news, because it means every single one of them is fixable, starting today, regardless of what your paycheck looks like. If more than one of these hit close to home, don't treat that as a verdict on your character. Treat it as a list, 5 specific, fixable things, in order of how much you want to tackle first. Which one of these hit closest to home for you? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.